Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Joss, thank you so much for welcoming me to your lovely home. The weather was good, so we're outside today.
Kind to us.
We're at a distance because
Yes,
you are still
absolutely.
isolating and being cautious, and that's absolutely right.
Unfortunately.
We've known each other for a long time, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. You are a health policy, health advocate, NHS champion, extraordinaire, well-connected legend.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
So
Thank you.
no, and I'd love to get
That's
into a
so
conversation and for people to know about the stuff you've done over the years, your thoughts on the future of healthcare, health policy, etc.
Yeah.
So perhaps just start by introducing yourself.
Oh, yes. Quite how to introduce myself is an interesting thing. I, as you say, I was very active in health policy. I started off with, I was a BBC reporter for a few years till it wasn't compatible with having children, and you had to tour around and whatnot and be peripatetic, and it wasn't compatible with being a single mum. So I changed to the public sector and focused on children and young people services, and so I basically became a consultant in 0 to 19 services, and during that time the thing that I guess most proud of is the fact I helped Gordon Brown with his tax credits, devising his tax credit system, and he still remembers it when he sees me, which I've touched about. Sorry, that makes it sound a bit as if I'm... Anyway.
No, but it's legendary status.
It very much is about who I am, is about supporting people to make the best of their lives and to support equality as far as possible. I know it's not possible that we are all living completely, that would be, optimal, but the divide between rich and poor has actually got even more profound since then, and not just in the UK. But I also worked a lot on the Sure Start programme from when it started right the way through for several years, and then I was, which you probably don't know, I was injured very badly in a work setting in 2006, and it nearly finished me off, and it gave me long-term, lifelong injury to my immune system and to my lungs and to my neurological system. So I was exposed to a toxic gas incident in a town hall, and that you can't see it. I was really ill for about 4 years, and then I found treatment in the States actually, which thank God my local NHS docs embraced, and I then recovered enough after 18 months to be able to sort of resume but then that completely changed my priorities, and my focus then became entirely health and public health for obvious reasons. I became a patient advocate for the conditions that come out of that, and also then became very involved in the Safe Lewisham Hospital campaign, and so I was with the wonderful Vicky Penner, I was half the press team for that, and we got the story out far and wide as it should have been, and also engaged with a lot of parliamentary process, and just became very active in health policy, as well as the Safe Charing Cross Hospital, the West London Hospital debacle, which has now flared up again, as Andy Slaughter was saying the other day, and just basically became a kind of campaigning wonk, as someone told me I was. So.
Campaigning champion, more like.
Thank you.
Yes, such an interesting history of advocacy and campaigning for the NHS. Related to your journalistic career and understanding about how the NHS is portrayed in the media,
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to hear your reflections on what the stories are like today from what it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, and how it's changed.
I think it's far more difficult now to get the media, and obviously when I say the media, they are not all the same. GB News is not Channel 4 News, and thankfully Nadine Dorries has gone away. Sorry, I was a bit political, but Nadine Dorries is not going to be able to close down Channel, or change Channel 4's remit any longer. And the BBC is not the BBC. It was where I worked there. There's far more political influence because we've just
now,
seen, because of the Richard Sharp issue is
chair,
really,
yeah.
a key point. But very visibly, it became more political. I was interested to see yesterday Chris Patten talking in critical terms of the government, whereas I noticed the interesting shift, and I wrote a piece about it, that when David Cameron came in, the Cameron suppers, as they were called, which enabled various people to kind of buy time with him, and Chris Patten was then at the BBC, and I kind of researched a chain through of influence into the BBC, with the BBC being increasingly less interested in covering what we would call kind of healthy quality stories. And I mean, there was one time when Andrew Lansley refused to obey the High Court order to release the risk assessment on his horrendous Health and Social Care Bill of 2012. And I wrote something probably still online somewhere called Wrecking the NHS through Reckless Reforms, or I can't even remember the title of it because I'm a long COVID. Breaking the NHS through Reckless Reforms. It's still up there somewhere. And so I spent hours in the Lords and the Commons tracking the Health and Social Care Act. And so I could see where it was all going, and I heard all sorts in the corridors, as you do. And then Andrew Lansley refused point blank to release the risk assessment. And when I tried to get Newsnight to cover it, not interested, because it's not for us. And I offered them to incredibly eminent lawyer, an incredibly eminent crossbenching baroness, who sadly is no longer with us, to discuss it. And I said, if you find two people, you want balance, those people are not for us. I won't even name them, but if I did, you would be horrified. And they put the phone down on me, and I was polite, and that I thought, wow, this is a massive shift, because that I was offering something really on point and on balance, and they said, no, we're covering it. Was an MP had got drunk in one of the bars, and they were focused on that instead, and they said that's what we're focused on this week.
Wow.
That's kind of, and so I have seen progressively a shift, particularly in, just even the scripting of just small words will change the emphasis.
And is that a scripting to be more titillating, sensationalist, that will then attract media attention, or
less? Well, certainly, I'm afraid to say, in the case of the BBC, it's less critical of the government, because they're clearly feeling under the cosh. And I know friends in other stations who are not, don't have to be quite so mindful of it, that they will get a phone call from number 10 if they don't like something or something. So, you remember the briefing sessions, so-called, with I was involved with helping devise some of the questions for some of those journos, because they needed people who understood. And if number 10 didn't like the question, they would ring the station afterwards and say, we're not happy with that. We're not happy with that reporter, that journalist. Don't send them again. And
do you think, because of, again, it's a very general term, but social media impacting the revenue of traditional media, the traditional media are trying to have to be a little bit more closer and supportive of government? Or?
I don't think it's to do with I think social media has skewed the conversation, and we've seen what's happened to Twitter, sadly, since Musk took over. I mean, lots of people I follow, I have to look them up. So the algorithm is pushing people at me that I don't know, I have no interest in, or they're really right wing and I don't particularly want to see what they say. And so that impacts, but what is coming at me on Twitter, frankly, is what our government would want me to see. They don't want me to be in touch with the people that I've got a caucus with. They, we've got, I know you could call it an echo chamber, but goodness me, through the COVID pandemic, Twitter was and is, though it's more hard work now, incredibly valuable. Medical Twitter would say, it's put researchers in touch with researchers on an international basis. And I mean, I have to say that the approach here, which is because of the government, because we have a government that is libertarian and does not want us to be taking mitigations and drop them as shit. Never mind not locking down in time as is coming out in the inquiry, which at the time was you need to lock down. Do not wait, because the longer you wait, the more cases there will be. And, you know, the then Prime Minister was la la la, you know, and not going to COBRA meetings and all of that. And the way they have communicated public health, despite the public health cohort, or most of them, best efforts, as then making bad use of social media and exploiting our UK media, shoving nonsense at the public, like masks don't work, or what they do. Well, it's got to be the right standard of mask, but they jolly well do. You know, studies in the States, particularly with using schools where they were masking and schools where they weren't, the number of cases was enormous difference.
Yeah.
And do we care about the safety of our children in school? And the latest thing is, yes, we all know that ventilation and air filters are really, really helpful in reducing viral infections and not just COVID. But the government and they kept it quiet, just discovered they gave their contract to schools, which they've also kept very quiet from the public, acknowledging that ventilation is needed in our schools, but not sort of bringing the public with them, do it on the QT, and on the QT, yet another dodgy contract with Dyson, because his stuff is more expensive and less effective than one. I've got one in my sitting room, which is brilliant. It's got lights on that show when, you know, what the air quality is like. And that sort of thing. And, you know, I discovered the PPE scandal early on by accident, because I was asked to talk to a group of UK textile manufacturers, which is not a group of people that I generally encounter in life, but one of our wonderful Fabian women friends runs the Fashion Roundtable tomorrow. And she asked me to speak to them, and I was really touched. I was chatting to these guys on Zoom. We're all in lockdown, and they're saying, we want to help produce this stuff. We have been in touch with everybody we think of in government, all that, and we're just meeting Stonewall. And it was these really well-known, some of them high-end fashion house suppliers, saying, we just need to know the spec, and we can do it. We want to do it. We want to help the frontline workers particularly. We want to help the doctors who are, at that point, were dying in huge numbers, particularly the black and minority ethnic colleagues. And they were getting, and so I said, well, do you know, let's try it out. So I partnered with someone, if you like, and so I found what I discovered, personal experience, what you're supposed to do to get through. And there was this absolute stonewall at a consultancy firm that they had hired to work with Michael Gove in the Cabinet Office, who at that point was head of Cabinet Office. And we just couldn't get anywhere. I think one firm managed to. It was Deloitte, and I was like, well, why is Deloitte involved? Because they're not experts in PPE at all. And so basically I had to email one, and then it went through one ministry, then it came back, and you then had to contact another person who then was Deloitte, and it was Deloitte with a gatekeeper, most obviously. And we tried to find out what was going on, and a friend of mine was in a meeting subsequently, and there were ministers in the meeting, and they just zipped it and said, we're just focusing on foreign imports. And of course I did try and get the media onto that, and they were saying, well, you've got what have you got to show us? What have you got to show us, Joss? And I'm like, this is really important. And they didn't disagree it wasn't important, but they said, we don't know how to work. I said, Michael Gove will be at the middle of this somewhere, because
Sorry, and so they don't know how to sell the story. Is that what you're going to say?
they didn't know how to link Michael Gove to, or a particular politicians to what was going on. I said, well, it's a government policy, so I said, somewhere there'll be something funny going on, there'll be whatever. And of course, that's now absolutely emerged. And I have to say, one producer did ring me and apologise. He said, I'm really sorry, we didn't follow this up. I said, well, what can I do? Just give you the info. And that sort of thing is about trust. The British people want to know what's happened to their taxes, want to know that they're being looked after in a health crisis, want to know their best interests of their children are being looked after. This isn't about picking on someone because they're a different party. This is about public standards of behaviour and not thinking they're going to be chucking billions of quid, which, by my estimate, overall, with all what I term the crony contracts, which caught on, is really, it's like you're looking at something like 50 billion. And now they're saying, well, we can't afford this, and we can't afford to pay the nurses, and we can't afford that, and we've got to, and the opposition is saying the same now, really, which upsets me. And you just like, for goodness sake, Michelle Mone, what's she doing with all her funds in her yachts? And, was she getting 29 million quid for dodgy PPE? So, and he just reflects so badly on the way our country is not working. And that's the tip of the thingy,
Yeah, is there something, there seems to be something extraordinary about your curiosity and investigative skills to be able to find these things, and first of all to understand very complex matrix or structures between government departments and the NHS, which isn't just one NHS. Do you think that's not common these days, or because if I look at the health policy landscape and investigative journalists, you are and have been one of the only people over many years kind of finding these things out, being able to galvanise people. What is it about what you do that you think is unique?
I think I am. This is why I found the tax credit system easy to understand. I think I'm good at joining the dots between people, things, and policy.
People, things, policy.
People, been there. The thing that we're looking at, which is, say, an abstract, possibly, or, it could be a chair, a phone, or a mask, or whatever, and policy. I think I'm good at just linking those things up. I don't know why, no idea. I think there are other people out there who can do that, but the way our system is structured, it makes it so. Investigative journalism in the UK has really declined over the last few years, and that's because of the way, well, particularly the last 13 years of Conservatives governments have really made it very difficult for our news outlets to tell the real story. And I see, German news outlets, or even somewhere like Argentina, or, really digging into what's happened with us, whether it's with Brexit or our COVID management or whatever. And because they are resourced to do those fine-tuned stories, even in the States. And we have a problem with CNN at the minute because they allowed a Trump town hall to take place, which was a ludicrous editorial decision. But CNN were covering British stories much better than our media are, I would say, able to. Some it's for malicious intent, so they've got editors who are, for want of a better, part of the government, basically. They previously worked under certain, some of them worked in Number 10 and then became editors or senior editors, or, you're looking at Robbie Gibb, for instance. So he's got a very specific political agenda, which he shouldn't have once he's gone to the BBC. BBC's, charter is about educate, inform, entertain.
Impartiality, objectivity.
And I saw someone very senior tweet That was the CNN guy after the Trump town hall, tweeting, "But were you not entertained?" And I, from the UK, obviously not quite the same, said, "But you're not. He's not there to entertain. This is dangerous talk. If you start saying politicians are only here to entertain us, and that's their intrinsic value, so ho ho ho, isn't Boris Johnson a funny fellow? Don't make me laugh because I know what he's really about, but I can understand why some people might find him amusing. However, his job was not here to be amusing. That's not the same thing. Trump is not here to be amusing. And in fact, he derogatorily mimicked a disabled person, which should have immediately chucked him out of the running. So politics can be ludicrous, and yes, there are times I've laughed a lot because of something that's happened. But politics is serious business. It is not. Its primary function is not to be a laugh. Yeah, you can watch Have I Got News for You, and that's great satire. But satire is different from just being ticklingly funny, because satire is biting at the things that we need to notice.
It's been difficult to tell the difference nowadays between irony, satire, and actual news. But
so the British public, sadly, are not largely, and I don't want this to sound patronising because I don't mean it that way. British public are given what they're given. They've got no choice in the matter, and so the stuff that really is important is so often hidden from them. And we're mourning the loss. I can't claim to have known her, but Emily Morgan was a really fine, fantastic journalist, and she passed away at the age of 45 last week. And we have a member of my family who passed away from the same thing in her 40s, leaving my son's cousin with 2 small children. And so from her family, but the family of media are so upset that they've lost her. She was full of integrity, and like Paul Brand, who I do know, who's marvellous and has won awards for his coverage of all the care home issues. I know people at Channel 4 News who I've done some work with, just fantastically dedicated on a short string, because their budget is massively reduced from something that the BBC has got. But written journalism here, clickbait, with a few exceptions. And then you get disappointments like renowned, well-regarded journalists found to be gropers and sexual abusers, which again...
challenging. Talking about, I mentioned impartiality and objectivity. As you know, I'm a civil servant, so I think I've got to try and balance the scales a little bit. You did allude to the opposition earlier, and I know you're quite connected on that side of politics.
Yeah.
Interesting to hear your views about how they're considering health policy now.
Well...
And is the pause because
you see my pause
because there's a I mean, love-hate, is that too simplistic?
I'm disappointed. I'm sorry. And I always speak as I find. I'm not somebody to be buttering people up, or I will be honest about my views, but hopefully not rude. And I mean, if somebody from another party that I don't vote for did something I appreciated, I would say so. I think I have. It doesn't mean that I'm thinking the whole system is amazing.
Just objectively,
you've got to be a bit nuanced in life.
Yeah.
But I am disappointed that the current leadership doesn't feel so strongly about speaking out for the needs of the well-deserved needs of the public sector workforce, particularly if we're talking health. They have been through so much, particularly the last 3 years, and staff burnout, worker burnout, frontline deaths, frontline long-term injury from long COVID like me. I mean, I wasn't frontline, I caught it differently. But long-term dedicated health workforce people who have been struck down with long COVID, just being cast out of the workforce and just left. And I know Angela has spoken out for them and Andrew Gwynn. But there is no strategy to support our health workers as far as I can see from being cooped up here. I'm not doing what I was when I was going out and about having lots of conversations. So I'm limited in my understanding in the way I guess that most people are now, because I'm not doing what I don't.
And can we go back to that? Because so the Saving Hospital campaigns, particularly Lewisham, which I think was so popular and so well received.
So many people put so much. There was, we had a committee of 12, and it was really frantically hard work and hundreds of people engaged. But we had this core of us who just stuck with it, and
so two questions. First, I'll put the first one. I'll come to the second one afterwards. But what was so challenging about that situation? Was it the different number of stakeholders, Treasury, NHS England, the local authority that you had to battle against? Or what was the biggest?
The local authority ran their own legal challenge, and we worked with them. So Steve Bullock, their mayor, and we were just like we were just kind of there together as a combined force, and supported all the marching, and we kept it all very peaceful. There were no funny business, and it was really, given the numbers, I still think, gosh, how did that group manage it? And Louise as chair, and Tony, who was also at that point a full-time paediatrician, and the doctors from Lewisham who engaged, and nurses, and we had just 25,000 people marching quietly as a family event. But it wasn't just that. We held events almost every week. Some weeks there was more than one. And then it was hard work. I
just remember hearing stuff all the time, nearly every week. And I was on the newsletters for a couple of stuff. And
yeah, I didn't do the newsletter. That was Olivia.
Okay.
It was Tony's wife. And Vicky and I just kept in touch with the media. And then it ended up going all the way around the world. And we've got, German press. Somebody flew over from Canada to speak to us, Spain, in Qatar. And like, oh, crumbs, how's this happened, But what we got was blanket coverage from every news outlet. And that wouldn't happen today. It'd be
Why not?
Because the UK media is because the government, I guess, we have, and I'm sorry to say it, it's far more aggressive in terms of trying to control the media than it was back then.
And so, independent of the government and the media, what about, like public activism? So, for example, I think about the promise of 12 or 20 extra hospitals, capital investment needed in hospitals. Why do you think there isn't a groundswell of public outcry about stuff like that to then say, well, actually, in my area, we need to invest in this or save this hospital?
Again, because the government is focused on culture wars, on mixed messaging to divide and rule, rather than, goodness me, the public order with, people being arrested for just waving a placard, and just walking slowly down the road. Goodness knows what they'd have done with us in Lewisham if it was, heaven knows, what are they going to do? Put 25,000 people on a charge? I don't know. I remember we did a rap, Save Lewisham Hospital campaign rap with a number of members from the Lewisham Hospital Choir who came not as the Lewisham Hospital, they came self, because it was some of them had sang with Gareth Malone's choir, And we performed this on the pitch of the FA Cup quarter final at Millwall, and it was slightly snowing, and it went out live around the feed around the world, and we were like, oh, that was different. We weren't really.
And then wasn't there a song, or was it that same song that was then re-released for Christmas?
No, they did that. That was different. This was the Lewisham Hospital.
Okay.
So no, the actual Lewisham Hospital choir sang "Bridge Over You" and got to number one.
That was it.
And then they also did the following year. I think it's called "Hope" with Justin Bieber. So they are just an amazing, separate thing. But some of them became involved with this rap, which was, I was just watching it. I said, remembered it the other day. Oh, goodness me, that's 10 years ago. That's it. It came up in my feed 10 years later.
Oh, the memory reminder thing. Yeah.
But we did a lot of stuff in parks and just in the community, and it would be much, much more difficult to organise those things now. And also, we had a very good relationship with the local police, a very, very, very good relationship with the local police, because I'm one of the contact people, so I can say that definitively. And so from the point of view of organising stuff in public spaces that now would be deemed to be protest, some of it possibly noisy because we had music, and also getting the press coverage, I think it would be so much more difficult now. And the people who were in government at the time absolutely hated our campaign, because we were able to voice the needs, and not just subjective needs, not just an emotional need, because there's obviously an emotional attachment to the NHS for very good reason, but the actual data, the statistics, producing the doctors got together and produced a big folder of stuff and managed to organise it so they got to meet Boris Johnson here. All the facts and figures in it of what would happen if...
It's so interesting, and you've partly already answered my second question, which was going to be about what were the ingredients of your success. But yeah, there is something, again, wonderful you've done over the years, and with this campaign in particular, of translating complex information, finding interesting, some might call them gimmicks, but hooks for people to pay attention to, and yeah, being very locally situated to then activate people to care about it and turn up and create noise for those things.
That's not, I'm not on my own getting people. That needed a cohort of us that local people would trust. So in the case of Lewisham, obviously a bunch of brilliant doctors. So I was the press person. I was not the main reason they joined in. I guess I kind of got a few friends extra to come and join in, but I cannot remotely claim to have. No, that was because we had, and Lewisham as well is a borough that's very politically active. I think Jeremy Hunt regretted choosing Lewisham as his first port of call to try and start closing down hospital services.
Should have picked somewhere else a bit quieter, perhaps.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. He ran away from us once. He circled a building. You can cut this out if you want. We were waiting outside a conference to speak to him politely. It was only about 8 of us, I think. It wasn't like a big rowdy... But we were told if we waited, we went inside the hallway and they said, no, if you wait outside, he's not arrived yet. So he circled the building in his car for 50 minutes before he finally got out, and people were leaving because they were waiting for him. And we weren't blocking the entrance, we were just standing on the pavement like this,
If only there was a fridge she could have snuck into.
He kind of leapt out. He kind of leapt out of the car. He's like, bunny in the headlights going, like this. I was like, hello, Mr. Hunt, you've arrived. It got dark by then. Hello, Mr. It could have been a day conference. He was the final speaker. Yes. And he kind of was through. And the woman with him said, if you wait, he'll come and speak to you afterwards. So we're all right. And we're still on the pavement 50 minutes later. And we're like, who went in, and they said, "Oh, he went out the back door." So, but the look on his face, and you can see wonderful Joan Ruddock and Heidi Alexander, Jim Dow, who were the MPs for Lewisham at the time. Whenever, I mean, particularly Joan, who's fabulous, she sat up and she said, "Mr. Hunt, on the matter of Lewisham," and you'd see him swallow hard, like this, because obviously the camera doesn't tell. And he'd be obviously wanting to kind of, because, oh, it's Dame Joan Ruddock again, oh gosh, you know, and because we spoke the truth. And then, of course, it became, they tried to get a bill through to basically mean that communities like ours would have no say in it. And Lord Phil Hunt, who was then the lead on health, with Thornton, Baroness Grange Thornton, both of them together made sure this thing didn't actually get through. When they put in a pray or something. Sorry.
Second read, prayer, or something.
Yeah.
You've. If I could just interrupt you there for a second, because you've mentioned truth and trust a couple of times now. And again, knowing you as I've known you for a long time, I know many leaders, political leaders, particularly on the left, really trust and value your opinion, have done in the past, at least. And just interesting to get your insight. So for people that are interested in policy, advising, briefing senior leaders, what is it about your relationship with them that has allowed you to continually be trusted and, you know, respected?
I'm sometimes puzzled as to why. I don't know, it kind of happened. I didn't push for anything. I just kind of potted around and did stuff.
Good stuff.
And had conversations and got asked to stand to be certain roles and got elected.
Within
Because I became chair of SHA London, which is the London
the Socialist
Labour
Health
Party.
Care
Yeah,
Organisation
it's
Association.
It's the Labour Party health affiliate, and so they're a whole. They're called the Socialist Society. So in the Labour Party, there's one for education, one for health. The Fabian Women's Network, or the Fabian Society, which includes the Fabian Women's Network, which I was involved a lot with. They're one of them. So the Fabian Society goes back. I can't remember I should remember again, long COVID, I can't remember the year it was founded, but it's got incredibly strong, profoundly strong grounding in social justice and a very inclusive approach to, you know, policy making. And what else? There's one for housing. So every specialist area has a socialist society, and I had to stop once I developed long COVID, which I caught simply because a neighbour barged into my place, not here, somewhere else, and just during lockdown, just barged in.
Sorry about
and
that.
Was infectious and just in my face. I'm like, oh, I didn't know they were infectious. It was just I'd already had it once. I caught it in March 2020. I was one of the first cases. I caught it in Parliament, chairing a health meeting, and I was poorly for about a month, and then I recovered, and I was fine until I caught it again nearly a year later, and then I've not been fine at all since. And so it's now 28 months. The first year, 18 months, horrible, really bad. But I'm upset that there is so little progress in the UK. So, I mean, I got to the point where I thought, if I keep deteriorating like this, because I'd already got this underlying condition, it meant I was more vulnerable, and swine flu nearly killed me. I ended up in hospital for a couple of weeks with that. I thought, I'm deteriorating so much. Am I going to last? Am I going to last more than another 6 months to a year? I thought, I can't let this go. Also, I've got a very good supportive GP, so he ran some tests, and the first thing he discovered was I've got a new clotting issue I'd never had before, which I'll pick up in a minute. This was now 18 months ago, and that my vitamin D had absolutely bottomed right down, as had my folate levels, and because I got excruciating bone pains, edema. I mean, my oxygen level was perpetually around about 90. I have to say, it's only 92, 93 today. There's so much research going around the world which UK needs to engage far more with, and absolutely, as I suspected, I was talking to a health professor about it well over a year ago. I said, I think long COVID probably involves oxidative damage, and it does. There's now research has come out with that. So not everybody's got that, but what we all have is, or the people who've been tested for it. I haven't been tested for microclots, but bear in mind, early on my GP said, you've got a new clotting issue. So people who've been tested for microclots, of all of them in the countries where they do it, have been found to have microclots which bear the virus. We're not still infectious, but the virus is still whizzing around in the fibres in microclots. So our blood is very sluggish, and obviously the oxygen retention is reduced. So it's a vascular disease. It's not a respiratory disease. It affects brain function. So a lot of people have really bad brain fog, as it's called, but obviously it's cognitive issues. But there are various manifestations of that. Some people have it because they've got something that they get diagnosed, unfortunately, with early onset Alzheimer's. Others, there's a certain amount of brain inflammation that they've found in quite a lot of studies. Some have got the plaque build-up, which is the Alzheimer's. I take a whole raft of supplements that I have researched, and my doctor's very supportive of this, including my consultant at King's, long COVID consultant. So matching my symptoms to potential supplements,
to help relieve the symptoms,
and I have to say it's massively helped, and I'm running slightly on empty today because I've run out of one of them. I ordered them in time, but they're obviously in high demand, and I haven't got my new order yet, because acidosis and lactic build-up is intrinsic with oxidative damage,
sure.
which again I knew from my previous work, and so I got onto that. So basically it affects brain function, nitric oxide imbalance, blood flow. There's all sorts of reasons why our brains aren't functioning as well.
And why do you think it doesn't have the attention it should have in the UK as it does in other countries?
Very sorry about this, but it is largely political, because we have a libertarian government who wants people to feel it's all over and to live a normal life, because rather than say, for instance, like they have done in Taiwan, and I have friends in Taiwan and South Korea, likewise I have friends in South Korea. My son went to Japan a few months ago. He works in the theatre, did a theatre tour over there. They are far more conscious of airborne transmission. And they have
been for a while before COVID.
They had been for a while, but they really latched onto it and kept cases far lower, because the general population understands if you have a good quality mask, you are not putting yourself at risk, you're keeping case numbers low. And that was the main thing, keep the case numbers low. And in Taiwan they've got HEPA filters on buses, just thinking sensibly about mitigations in public spaces that enable people to have as safe as possible, normal, bar the mask, quality of life. And that has worked, because the numbers are, the numbers of deaths and long COVID cases in the UK per population head, it's in the top 3 internationally, I think. It's not numbers, it's per population head. And, they just, as soon as they could, they stopped doing, I'm not pro-lockdown, but there was a time when it was a necessity. But then also, you can get a vaccination and we don't have to do anything else. But not everybody is suitable for the vaccine in the clinically vulnerable, clinically extremely vulnerable cohort. So I am one of, we reckon about 1.5 million of us. There's about 2 million that we know of cases of long COVID in the UK. And it's probably more, because some people just don't know they've got it. They just keep saying they just don't feel very well, and they can't pinpoint why. But those of us who know, we've got the diagnosis, or the symptoms tally, there's about 2 million of us just in the UK, and there's about 1.5 million of us who are having to just live very separate lives, because I've had it twice, I caught it so easily, I catch it again. I mean, why would I do that to myself? And also, why would I put my family under that pressure? I love my family, and I'm missing terribly spending lots of time because I have grandchildren now, and I'm someone that absolutely loves spending time with small children. If they were to give me something and then I was very ill or worse, I mean, how would they feel? I can't do that.
Can't take the risk.
I absolutely, for a whole raft of reasons, and I bear in mind I have spent a long time focusing on how to get my health back over the past couple of years, and you know, I have succeeded to a point where I'm doing a lot better than I was, and I couldn't have sat chatted to you like this last summer, not at all. I'd have run out of oomph, and my voice got very weak, so I would have sounded very weedy, and just trying to remember things. And I still today, my oxygen's low, so I'm not remembering absolutely everything.
Well, look, Joss, you've been absolutely fine now, and actually, that is a good point to perhaps end this conversation, and we can have another one another time soon. But yeah, it's
Can I
terrible.
just say a little bit more? Sorry to interrupt you,
Okay.
and that's a fault of
No,
again,
go for it.
Can I just do a little summary about the supplements, because so many people on Twitter are saying I'm just living in a twilight zone and I don't know what to do, and my family, I can't, you know, and I feel so sad for people who are struggling with long COVID, who've also got young children. Their lives are in pieces, and also people who should be absolutely embarking on really important points of their career, and their lives are in bits. They've had to go back and live with their parents, because the main cohort of long COVID people are 35 to 50. I mean, I'm over 50, so I'm more unusual, but the main people with it, and then there's the long COVID children, kids, who are having a terrible time because the UK paediatricians have bought into, for whatever reason, the psychological element to it, which is not, it's physical, vascular, mitochondrial damage, metabolic damage. That's why we need supplements, because we don't absorb the nutrients of the food like we used to do. T-cell damage in the same way as for HIV, B-cell damage similarly. You know, hammer down our immune system. These are all coming out in research that's going on around the world. The research in the UK is currently very narrow, and for the good of, also for goodness sake, the economy, we have got a whole millions of people unable to work who want to. We have got a workforce crisis in the NHS, and you're losing people because these guys are getting cast out of the workforce, no treatment,
No support.
no funding support, heaven's sake. And it is a crisis that is being hidden from the public. And supplements work to a point, but there's a treatment called aphoresis, which was written about in the BMJ, I think, with some scepticism, but is shown to help. That's been Germany, USA are starting, the clinics are learning how to use it. But we need biomarkers, that's the urgent thing, and there are biomarkers being developed, but they don't seem to be being recognised in the UK. And I say that as a patient and a health policy person on behalf of all the people who are struggling with long COVID in various ways, because we're not all the same.
Yeah.
The virus attacks us differently,
Yeah.
possibly depending on our genetic makeup. It's also been found to be changing the genome. So it is the hidden health crisis.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you got that in.
Sorry.
No, very good. But yeah, I think we're getting out of time,
Yeah.
and I'm going to value your time as well and your health, and make sure that I save you for another longer
I
conversation.
hope I wasn't too